morning, I want to share something that, a story that we all know. If you've been a Christian, you probably have heard the story from Sunday school, and it's not a new story. But I want to present it in a little different manner this morning. And this morning, I want to talk about the David and Goliath story. David and Goliath is down in history, and we all know about it. So 1 Samuel chapter 17. 1 Samuel chapter 17. I'm going to actually speak a few verses, but it's if you can go back home and read the whole chapter of 17. But this morning I want to talk about God conquered, David killed. God conquered, but David killed. And let me explain to you as I go down what's the difference between the conquering and the killing. And so if just to refresh our memories, Goliath, a giant, they say he's more than 9 feet, and strong guy, has been in the army ever since his youth and all that stuff. He challenges the Israelites. The Philistine army challenges the Israelites, and this is going on for days. And I know Saul was the king of the country and was taking care of the Israelite army. And the Philistine army was challenging them and mocking them and really pushing them and intimidating them. And so basically, to cut the long story short, for many days, Goliath comes forward and he challenges the Israelite army saying, hey, look, here's the deal. I want you to send one guy from your place, just one guy. And if that guy kills me, we will be your slaves. And if I kill that guy, your guy, you're going to be our slaves. Now, if you understand the sequence there and the reality there, everybody except Goliath were very small-made and very not so big and huge and experienced. Goliath was clearly taking advantage of a situation here. He looked at everybody, he knew they were all not so good. And he knew there's nobody going to come from there. And he was so confident that this is going to happen for him. And so that's the background. And so what happens is, let me read from verses 12. And you'll understand a little bit of the story. So 1 Samuel 17, 12 onwards says, Now David was the son of a man named Jesse, an Ephrathite from Bethlehem in the land of Judah. Jesse was an old man at the time, and he had 8 sons. Jesse's 3 oldest sons, Eliab, Abinadab, and Shimeah, had already joined Saul's army to fight the Philistines. David was the youngest son. David's 3 oldest brothers stayed with Saul's army, but David went back and forth so he could help his father with the sheep in Bethlehem. For 40 days, every morning, evening, the Philistine champions strutted in front of the Israelite army. 40 days this was happening. They were threatening these guys. One day, Jesse said to David, Take this basket of roasted grain and these 10 loaves of bread and carry them quickly to your brothers and give these 10 cubes of cheese to their captain. See how your brothers are getting along and bring back a report on how they're doing. David's brothers were with Saul and the Israelite army at the valley of Elah, fighting against the Philistines. So David left the sheep with another shepherd and set out early in the morning with the gifts as Jesse had directed him. He arrived at the camp just as the Israelite army was leaving for battle, filled with shouts of battle cries. Soon, the Israelite army and the Philistines' forces stood facing each other, army against army. David left his things with the keeper. Now look at this. This guy was he's not a very old guy. He was probably in his teens. He's not a very big guy. He was the youngest, probably in his teens. Small fella, just a shepherd boy. David left his things with the keeper of supplies. What was he supposed to do? Take the stuff and go and give it to his brothers, greet his brothers, and take back the report to his dad. That was his job profile. Look what he does. He left all the things with the supplies keeper and hurried out to the ranks to greet his brothers. So basically, he hurried out to the ranks. Ranks meaning that's where the guys stand, where they go into battle. That's the battlefield. That's right, the forefront. And he ran there to meet his brothers. That's a dangerous place. You can die there. Okay? Meet his brother. As he was talking with them, Goliath, the Philistine champion from Gath, came out from the Philistine ranks. Then David heard him shout his usual taunt to the army of Israel. Now, the Philistines and Goliath, how many days were they doing this for? 40 days. 40 days they will come there, they will intimidate the Israelite army, they will shout abuses, insults, and then they'll go back. They're basically tormenting and scaring these guys. Now David's come there for the first time, okay? And when he's there, he's hearing Goliath saying these things. Shout with the army of Israel. As soon as the Israelite army saw him, who saw Goliath, they began to run away in fright. Have you seen the giant? The men asked. He comes out each day to defy Israel. The king has offered a huge reward to anyone who kills him. He will give that man one of his daughters for a wife. That's a great reward, getting a wife for free. And the man's entire family will be exempt in paying taxes. That's a great reward. No tax. You get a wife for free and no tax. You're a good guy here. David asked the soldiers standing nearby, what will a man get for killing this Philistine and ending his defiance of Israel? This is a small shepherd boy. Look at the audacity of this fellow. He's a shepherd boy. He has no clue of war. And look at what he's asking the soldiers. Who is this pagan Philistine anyway, that he is allowed to defy the armies of the living God? Nobody has ever asked the question, who is this guy defying the living God? Nobody in the Israel army. Do you think those fellows didn't know God? You think the Israeli army didn't know God? They all knew God. David's brothers were there. Even they didn't have the audacity. So he asked, who is this guy defying the army of the living God? And these men gave David the same reply. They said, yes, that is the reward for killing him. But when David's oldest brother, Eliab, heard David talking to the men, he was angry. What are you doing around here anyways? He demanded. What about those few sheep you're supposed to be taking care of? I know about your pride and your deceit. David's elder brother is looking at him and shouting at him. I know what you're coming here for, he says. You just want to see the battle. You just come here to see the battle and maybe see us die. David replies, what have I done? What have I done now? David replied, I was only asking a question. He walked over to some others and asked the same thing and received the same answer. So 3 times he's asked. He's asked 3 different groups of people there. Then David's question was reported to the king. Now, you ask a question one time, it's fine. This little fellow is going and asking 3-4 people the same question. People caught his attention. His attention was caught. They kind of looked at this fellow as a little weirdo here. So the news went to the king saying, there's a small guy here who's asking, what will I get if anybody kills the king? The king kills Goliath. The king got to know about King Saul, and the king sent for him. Okay, now starts the real drama. So the king called for him. As soon as the king called for him, verse 32 says, this is David telling Saul, don't worry about this Philistine. This little teenage guy, probably plus 1, plus 2, first PU, second PU, kind of a first year degree college guy, some kind of that age group, maybe the 3rd year degree college, I don't know what. He looks at the king and says, don't worry about this Philistine. David told Saul, I'll go and fight him. Have you seen shepherd boys in Gubbi? Have you seen shepherd boys anywhere in Hennur, Gubbi, Anangalpur? Have you seen those shepherd boys? All they have in their hand is one stick and one water bottle. They'll be drinking water and one small tiffin box will be there. And all there, they'll be sitting down there. That's exactly David. Picture David that way. A little boy with a stick and a water bottle. That's all. He's saying, I'll go fight him. Don't be ridiculous, Saul replied. There is no way you can fight this Philistine and possibly win. You're only a boy. You're only a boy. And he's been a man of war since his youth. Goliath has been in war since his youth, and he's a man right now. He's probably 3 times the age of David. But David persisted. Now listen, David is testifying to Saul. David is starting his testimonials. David replied persistently, I have been taking care of my father's sheep and goats, he said. When a lion or a bear comes, to steal a lamb from the flock, I go after it with a club and rescue the lamb from its mouth. From whose mouth? From the lion's mouth. Not a dog, it's a lion. If the animal turns on me, the first sequence is I go and rescue it. If the lion turns on me, I catch it by the jaw and club it to death. Who's speaking? A shepherd boy is talking about a lion, not a dog. I dare you even do that to Hunter down there. You won't even try that with Hunter. Forget the lion, right? And I club it to death. I have done this to both lions and bears. He's talking like every week he does this. He says, I've done this to lions and bears. And I'll do it to this pagan Philistine. Look at the spirit inside of David. I'm trying to help you understand David's spirit inside. It's a very aggressive spiritual spirit. It says, I'll do to this pagan Philistine too. For he, listen, you know why David is so angry? You know why he's so angry? This is the reason why he's angry. He says, for he has defied the armies of the living God. He got so mad because he's defied God's army. He says, how dare this guy defies God's army? Okay? Living God. The Lord who rescued me from the claws of the lion and the bear will rescue me from this Philistine. Saul finally consented. Says, okay, this guy is a no use. We'll have to probably get his burial ready for soon and take his body back. Okay, Saul finally consented. All right, go ahead, he said, and may the Lord be with you. Then Saul gave David his own armor of bronze, helmet, and coat of mail. David put it on, strapped the sword over it, and took a step or two to see if it was like, for he had never worn such things before. I can't go in these. He protested to Saul, I'm not used to them. So David took them off again. He picked up 5 smooth stones from a stream and put them into his shepherd's bag. Then, armed only with his shepherd's staff and sling, he started across the valley to fight the Philistine. You know what is a sling? We call it catapult, undigol. Have you played undigol? When you're small, those catapults, we take it and hit dogs and birds and all that. That's exactly what David had. Nothing else. 5 pebbles and a sling. Goliath in verse 41 says, Goliath walked out toward David with his shield bearer ahead of him, sneering in contempt at this ruddy-faced boy. Am I a dog? He's looking at David saying, hey, you think I'm a dog? You're coming here with a stick in your hand? He wrote at David, that you come to me with a stick. And he cursed David by the name of his gods. Come over here and I'll give your flesh to the birds and wild animals, Goliath yelled. Goliath was over 9 feet. He was a man of war ever since his youth. He knows every part of war. He's been an experienced guy. He's probably 2.5, 3 times the size of David, or 2 times at least. David should have pissed in his pants by then. The Israeli army always ran away. When Goliath came for 40 days, they ran away when they heard Goliath, right? They yelled. Now look at David. This is a small shepherd boy. Verse 45. David replied to the Philistine, you come to me with sword, spear, and javelin. Listen, look at David's maturity and look at his spirituality. This is where we need to learn a lesson. He says, David replied to the Philistine, you come to me with a sword, a spear, and a javelin, but I come to you in the name of the Lord of heaven's armies. Isn't that something? He says, I come to you in the name of the Lord of heaven's armies, not with a javelin, not with a... I come to you in the name of the Lord, the God of Israel, and the God of the armies of Israel, whom you have defied. That's the key to be added. He says, I come to you in the name of the Lord of heaven's armies, whom you have defied. Today, now this is what I want us to understand. This is where we partner with God. This is where we really know who our God is. And this is the statement where David knew who his God was. And my question this morning to all of us, do we know who our God is? Do we know who our God is? And listen, Verses 46, David says, today the Lord will conquer you. Look at David's first statement. He says, today, hey Goliath, today I want to know two things. Today, the Lord will conquer you. First, God will conquer you. And he says, and I will kill you and cut your head off. There's two differences between this statement. He never said, God will kill you. He says, God will conquer you, but I will kill you. I was looking up the dictionary of the word conquered, trying to understand the real sense. And basically, if you look up the dictionary, there's a lot of beautiful words for the meaning of conquered. But it basically, the most important words are take control and overpower and subdue. The word conquer means take control and overpower and control the situation, subdue it, hold on to it, and get under absolute control. That's conquer. So what David was telling Goliath is, hey, listen, I am not in control of you. Listen to me, people. David knows who he is. He knows who his God is. David knows the role of his God, and he knows his role. He's trying to help us understand something very spiritual that we have never probably understood in our life. You see, when you face your Goliath, don't try to conquer and kill. Conquering is not your job. Conquering is the Lord's job. You can never control and take control of anybody. You will go absolutely out of control of every situation. So David, small shepherd boy, understood something that many people in that Israeli army didn't understand. Because David knew his God. He knew his God right from inside. And that's the reason why he challenged. He said, hey, you Philistine, I want to tell you two things today. First is, my God is going to conquer you. After he conquers you, I'm going to just walk and slice your head off and take it back with me. You see, slicing the head off is very a very easy thing to do. Conquering is not an easy thing to do. Conquering is not easy. David knew that his God had the most difficult thing to do, was just conquer the guy. All David had to come is take the knife and that's it. When you have a Goliath situation in your life, allow the Lord to conquer the situation. Don't try to conquer it. You'll be in trouble. You'll die. You won't live. You'll die. Ask God, God, you conquer this. Take control of this. Subdue it. Take it across and give it to me so that I will just cut it and take the victory. Look what happens. And I will cut your head. And then I will give the dead bodies of your men to the birds and wild animals, and the whole world will know that there is the God of Israel. And everyone assembled here will know that the Lord rescued his people. But not with the sword and spear. This is the Lord's battle, and he will give you to us. David's focus, David's intention, David's attitude, David's heart is to give glory to God. That's all it was. He says, I'm doing this so that you know, and everybody knows, that God is in control here. God of Israel is the God of everything. God is going to be glorified, and he's going to do things for us. And with all you have, I want you to know, this is who God is. Every step, he's giving glory to God. Every step, he's following the principles of spirituality. And he made it very clear. He made it, this is the Lord's battle, and he will give you to us. Verse 48, as Goliath moved closer to attack, David quickly ran out to meet him. David, no hesitance. He is not scared at all. He says, the Bible says David ran out to meet the guy, not even walked. He ran out to meet the guy. Reaching into his shepherd's bag and taking out a stone, just one stone, the first stone, he hurled it with his sling and hit the Philistine in the forehead. Now listen. Here's where the conquered and the kill is coming to place. Let me explain what David explained. This is the truth. It hit his forehead. The stone sank in, and Goliath stumbled and fell face down on the ground. okay, the stone sank into the forehead of Goliath, okay, and Goliath stumbled and he fell down. Now listen, when the stone hit the forehead, it says Goliath stumbled and fell down. You know what that means? God conquered Goliath. Are you understanding it? Remember what David said. David said, God will conquer you and I will kill you. I'm helping you to understand something here. Please understand. David said, God will conquer, I will kill. The stone hit his forehead. The Bible says David stumbled and fell. He didn't die yet. David still didn't die yet. He probably was knocked out. Have you seen these boxing matches? Mike Tyson and all these guys? One punch to the face, the fellow will go, he'll be seeing stars and all kind of animals. He's on the ground. He's not dead. He's just dazed. So the stone knocked out Goliath. He stumbled and fell. He's a big giant. He's not going to die so easily. But he's on the ground, right? So that is the first step of David's prophecy. He said, hey, God will conquer. So God conquered, controlled the situation, subdued the situation. Goliath was on the ground, okay? He stumbled and fell down, face on the ground. Verse 50. So David triumphed over the Philistine with only a sling and a stone. A sling and a stone. For he had no sword. Then, look at 51. Then David ran over and pulled out Goliath's sword. David never had a sword. Okay? He didn't even go to the Israeli army and take Saul's sword or his brother's sword. He ran towards Goliath, pulled out Goliath's sword, okay? Pulled the Goliath's sword from his sheath. David used it to kill him and cut off his head. That is the second prophecy of David. I will kill you. I want us to understand that if we don't understand the principles of God, you will not have your blessing. When you're trying to fight your Goliath, don't be everything that you think you can be. Don't try to control. Don't try to kill. Don't try to... No, don't do all those things. David was a smart guy. He knew what his strength was. He knew what his weakness was. All he went and told the guy is, he explained the spiritual process to the Philistine army. And when he was explaining that process, he was basically making sure everybody understood who God was. And he was also helping people to understand who he was. He was not showing off. He was not trying to be a hero here. He was giving glory to God every single step. But he was trying to make people understand where we stand and what we should do. And it says he cut off his head and took it back. Now I want to ask us, how many times when we have Goliath situations in our life that we learn to handle it this way? That we learn to look at our Goliath and say, hey, God will conquer you, man, and I will come and I will kill you. I don't have to come and do anything. I don't have to fight all my cases. God will fight my cases. He will subdue you. He will control you. He will take absolute possession of you. And once that happens, I will be in control. Just put on the UPS there, please. It says, I will be in control. When we have situations and circumstances, God is the God who takes control of us. God takes control of us. He's there 24/7. 24/7 to control every situation. And if we try to do the work of God and then try to do the work of us, then we're in trouble. This is a very simple spiritual lesson that we all have to understand and learn. Every day, we all have Goliath situations in our life. Every day. In our families, in our work, in our jobs, in our society, in our schools, our colleges, in our business places, on the roads, in society, in communities. Every day, you are going to see a Goliath. You can decide whether the Goliath is big and experienced and gigantic and powerful and you can run away like the Israeli army ran away. Or you can be like this little shepherd boy, David, who had no experience of any war, no sword, no javelin, no spear, no armor, but he had the experience of the living God. You just need to have the experience of the living God. You don't need anything else. You don't need anything more. And David proved to the world who God is. He proved to the world what God can do. And today we are reading his story after so many thousands of years. That little shepherd boy story, we are reading it after so many thousand years. If you look at the Bible, it's all simple people. Simple people who did mighty things. There were no great people. There were no great scholars and Bible teachers and bishops and popes, and none of these guys featured in the Bible. Simple people did mighty things. Mighty people did nothing. Mighty people only spoke mighty things. They did nothing. But the simple people did mighty things. And so it's important that we understand who God is. All this is only centered around one thing. Do you know who your God is? Or do you think you know who your God is? You see, there's two kinds of people. One is, I think God is this, and the other kind is, I know God is this. There are only two kinds of Christians in this world. The one kind will say, I think God is this. And the reason why they say, I think God is this, is because they heard somebody's experience of God being that. But the ones who said, I know God is this, is the ones who've experienced God personally, directly. The Israelite army only thought who God was. David knew who God was. That's the difference. There's no point of us understanding and knowing God when we personally don't experience God. And so I've always had this concept and view and understanding in my life. To be used of God, listen to me, I want to close with this. To be used of God, you don't need education, you don't need theology, you don't need leadership, you don't need money, you don't need influence, and you don't need talent and gifts. You don't need nothing. None of these are going to help you. If you have all of this and you're still not used of God, you're wasting your time. But I'll tell you something that you really need to have, and you'll be used of God. First is availability. Willing to say, yes, God, I'm available. And then the time for that availability. And the willingness for that time and availability. You need to be available, you need to have the time, and you need to have the willingness. Remember this, to be available, to have the time, and to be willing. If you have these three components and ingredients in your life, you will be like David. You will be like that small boy who gave the bread and loaf. You will be like Moses. You will be like all the great people of God who never had any great qualification, but they had the willingness, the time, and the availability. If you don't have the willingness, the time, and the availability, and you're praying and fasting and reading the Bible and going to church, God is never going to use you. Because God doesn't consider you available. He's not considering you willing. And He's not considering you having your time to give to Him. You see, sometimes you can be willing, listen to me. Sometimes you can be willing and you don't have the time for that willing. Sometimes you can have the time and you still are not willing. Sometimes you can have the time and the willing and you'll say, I'm very busy. Remember one of the stories in the Bible where Jesus looked at a guy and said, hey, come follow me. And he said, let me go bury my father and come. Remember that story? So he's willing to follow Jesus. He says, I don't have the time right now. I'll bury my father, then I'll come. Jesus said, let the dead bury the dead. You come now. Some people, when they read that passage, they say how cruel Jesus was. He doesn't want people to go and bury their father or what. Jesus never meant that. He never meant don't bury your father. He meant something more than that. You see, if you are not willing, you don't have the time, and you're not available, you're absolutely not going to be used of God. All three have to go in place, not just availability, the willingness and the time also. You can have two and still not have one. And all of us come under that category. We have two, but one is missing. Because of that one, God's not able to use us. David and all the simple guys in the Bible had the willingness, had the time, and they had the availability. And their names are written in the Bible. Their names are written in the Bible. Guess what happened after David did that? The young guy got a wife. And taxes are exempt. Just imagine. All he does is know his God, go and talk some great terminologies in front of that big giant with the confidence of who he is in his God, challenges the guy, takes one catapult, slings it, hits the guy, runs there, takes the sword, slices his head, comes back to the king. Where's my wife? I'm sure the king not only just gave him wife, he gave him wife, no tax, and probably the whole of the kingdom belonged to him, because David later on became the king, right? He became the king of Israel. The little boy who was a shepherd, who went and killed the giant, not only got the wife and exempt from taxes, God made him the king of Israel. You see, if you want to be in that position, if you want to be in that place, don't sit at home and look at the tube light and pray and read the Bible. It's not going to work. Sometimes you must be thinking, I'm reading the Bible, I'm praying, I'm going to church, God's not using me. Yes, He will never use you, because you don't have the willingness, you don't have the time, and you... What's the third one? What? Exactly. All three have to be in place. Try these three. You try these three and you come back to me and say, God's not using me. I'll probably quit the church. I'll quit the church. God will use you. God is not looking for educated people. He's not looking for talented and spiritual people. He's looking for committed people. You know what is commitment? You know what is commitment? Willingness, availability, and time. That's commitment. That is commitment. You know what's the definition of commitment? Don't look at the dictionary. Time, willingness, availability. That's the definition of commitment. You don't have to go and look at the dictionary. If you're not able to give God that, how can God use you? God is looking for available people. Remember the little boy Samuel? When his mom took him to the temple? As soon as God called, yes, God, I'm here. Little boy, tell me, did anybody teach him how to hear the voice of God? You know, in YWAM they have this topic. They have a lot of topics. I taught for 15 years in YWAM. And one of the topics is hearing the voice of God. For 1 week, they'll teach the students how to hear the voice of God. And after that 1 week, they're only hearing the voice of the devil. All of them are only hearing devil's voice, their relative's voice, and the cousin's wife, and the boyfriend and girlfriend's voice. Nobody still heard God's voice. Little Samuel, he just immediately, yes, God, here I am, tell me. That's why God used him. You see, when you need to understand, maybe you're saying, God never called my name. Well, He called your name a lot of times. You are so deaf. He called you a lot of times. Trust me, He called you a lot of times. You're either so preoccupied with your mobile phone, or you're so preoccupied with eating your chicken biryani, or you're so preoccupied with the business making an extra some money there, or you're so preoccupied fighting with someone, or arguing about your spirituality. You're so preoccupied, you never hear the voice of God. You see, when we are preoccupied in nonsense, the sense of the voice of God doesn't make sense to us. When we are preoccupied in nonsense, God's voice doesn't make sense because we are in nonsense. Simple. Simple. Get out of your nonsense and He will make sense. You will hear Him every day. Every day you'll hear Him. Trust me, every day. You won't have time. You'll be hearing Him every day. But because we are so used to nonsense, and we accept nonsense as part of our daily life, we say, what to do, brother? This is only part of life. No, this is not part of life. You accepted it. You accepted it. It is not part of life. You made it part of your life. Fighting with someone. Is it part of life? Did God create us to fight? Getting jealous with someone, is that God given us to be jealous with someone? We invited it and made it part of life and say, what to do, brother? That fellow is irritating me. Anybody will irritate you. You don't get angry. If you get angry, you've invited and made it part of your life. But the people who are used by God, they've decided what to make part of their life and what not to make part of their life. The priorities became the reality and the ultimate God factor in their life. And they strained out all the other nonsense. You see, it's very important that we have strainers in our life. Every day you get good things, bad things, stupid things, unnecessary things, time-wasted things in your life. Strain your life. Take out all the unnecessary things. A few days back I ordered an egg strainer. Yesterday it came. You know what's an egg strainer? Because I have cholesterol, I'm not supposed to eat the yolk of the egg. I'm supposed to eat only the white of the egg. So how do you separate the yolk and the white? So all this while my wife is breaking the egg and doing like this and doing like that and doing like this. So now I got the egg strainer. Just break the egg and put it there. All the white will come down. The yolk will be on top. We need strainers in our life. Take all the good stuff. All the nonsense, throw it out. Because all the nonsense will cause spiritual cholesterol in your life. Right now I got physical cholesterol. I'm battling it and I'm fighting it. I'm getting it. There is also something called spiritual cholesterol. Like how the fatty stuff causes the physical cholesterol, the unnecessary nonsense in your life will cause spiritual cholesterol. And you won't get heart attack, you'll get spirit attack. Cholesterol will give heart attack. This one will give spirit attack. You will get all kind of spirits coming into your life and torturing your life and wasting your life, and you will never hear God. I've got good news for all of you. If any spirit is attacking you and the devil is coming in your life, go to my terrace on top. I've got one pay chedi. See, I'm not joking. There's one chedi called pay chedi. Devil tree I've got on top. If you take that leaf and put it on your head, the devil will run away, it seems. That's what that nursery guy told me. I'm just joking, I'm not serious. But seriously, there's a pay chedi on top. That fellow said, sir, in those days, these women will take it and put it on their head and all the devil will look at them and run away, it seems. Maybe we can try it. But please don't take away all my leaves. I won't have a plant on top. Please tell me if you're taking one leaf. I'll give you one leaf you want. But anyway, let's understand who our God is. Our God is a good God. He wants to use us. Look at all these simple guys. How wonderfully they were used by God. And look at how much God got the glory and the honor. And today it is history. It is history. We are talking about it. God needs to be glorified. And we need to understand who God is to go and fight our Goliaths. Let's all stand.